Welcome back. David Hertel in for Elias. Well, one Montrealer has launched a class action lawsuit against Uber, claiming the company fails to adequately accommodate people with disabilities. Joining me now is Saro Turner, a lawyer from the Slater Vecchio law firm in Montreal, who filed the legal challenge in Superior Court last week. Saro, thank you for joining us this morning.
Hey, David. Thanks for having me on.
Am I pronouncing your name all right?
Perfect.
Okay, and it's Slater or Slater?
Slater Vecchio.
Slater Vecchio. Just want to make sure. So, tell me about this lawsuit.
Well, as you alluded to, the allegations and the claim are that Uber does not provide in any meaningful way transportation services to the physically disabled community. That is, people in wheelchairs, and not necessarily only wheelchairs, but scooters. We've included service animals in there, guide dogs. It's a proposed class action lawsuit. And effectively, in our position, what we allege is that in advertising mobility services available to all, and they're very clear in their mission statement and in their policies online that, this is available to the disabled community, the physically disabled community. There's a specific part of their ride services app called Uber Wave, where the drivers are trained and all this and that. But in practice, if one goes into the app and says, hey, I got a wheelchair and pick me up, denied. And that is, in our view, unlawful. It's a breach, most importantly, of the Quebec Charter of Human Rights and Freedoms. It's also, we say, a breach of consumer protection legislation for false and misleading advertising. You say something's available, but it's not. The more important aspect in terms of the alleged wrongful conduct is, as I said, the breach of the charter. So it's, and particularly Section 4, which is the right to dignity and honor. Folks, I mean, how would you feel, David, if everyone else can catch an Uber, but you can't because of a feature of you and your life that is already making your life way more difficult? I mean, it's a breach, so there's a loss of dignity there. There are feelings of shame, feelings of being harmed. And there's also Section 15 of the Quebec Charter, which is the right to access services typically available to the public. These aren't typically available. And there's a material effect on these folks, again, already marginalized by virtue of having serious physical disabilities. Insofar as they can't participate as equally and as meaningfully in cultural life, social life, economic life, political life. They just can't participate in society as well because they can't get around. And where Uber is ubiquitous, as it has become. So we're folks are, the disabled community, and I urge the non-disabled community to be upset about this because it's in our view, it's offensive. And there are two real aspects to remedies. What do we want from this? You may ask, if I may.
Of course,
David.
Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, so there are two aspects. It's one is compensation, and we call this in class action law access to justice. Folks who have experienced these wrongs, they experience loss of dignity, loss of some feelings of shame, some upset. They should be compensated. If I can't get where I need to go, and you're a company and you've got a license from the government to offer these services, and you breach the charter, well, then I'm entitled to compensation. And every single member of the community who's being denied, in our view, they've got a common experience that is moral damages or non-compensatory damages, we call it in law. So it's some sort of money for pain and suffering. Okay. And that's common to every single person who's in the disabled community who's being denied an Uber. And that's what we call access to justice. But perhaps more importantly is the second principle of class actions, which we call behavior modification. We want reasonable access to transportation on a go-forward basis, right? Uber's been around for 10 years, since 2014 in Quebec. And, folks in the physically disabled community, they deserve better, right? And it's mostly forward-looking insofar as let's get better services to them.
Okay.
Let's allow them to participate meaningfully in social, cultural, political, economic aspects
Saro,
of life.
I have to jump in here and cut you off because I'm running out of time, and I do want to ask you about this lawsuit specifically. That I get what you're saying. Yes, there is Uber Animal and there is Wave, and I understand the basis. But the way Uber is built up is like these private entrepreneurs. The system is usually based, the way I understand it, as, okay, there are X available drivers. And so if there aren't any at X time that can give that type of service to people who are disabled, there are other services that exist. There are taxi companies that specialize. There's also there's the STM. There's adapted transportation. So what's your answer to that? Because ultimately what it would mean, if I understand correctly, is that it would mean that Uber would be forced to actually provide 24/7 adapted transportation for disabled persons. Am I getting this right?
We're very clear about this in the legal document that we filed, and our allegations is that Uber is responsible for the unavailability of drivers in Quebec, and that's because they control the relationship with drivers. These are not just independent. Are they independent contractors? They structure their employment relationship that way, but they have substantial control over their driver operations through their fare systems. How they their incentive structure. They oversee all significant aspects of interactions between drivers and customers. And it's not to say that there has to be an Uber available within 2 minutes at all times in, Rimouski, where, small town, et cetera, as opposed to downtown Montreal, for example. But there's got to be reasonable access. It cannot be no drivers available ever. And when you go to the lodge a complaint section on their website, that's not working, right? And which is what we've got evidence of in our application. And so they cannot, to be straight, answer directly, they cannot just pass this off on, drivers are independent. They have a license. They're ubiquitous. They provide a service that everyone uses. And they've got to provide reasonable services to all members of the community, and they're not.
All right, got to leave it at that. Saro, thank you very much for your time this morning. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much, David.
Saro Turner, lawyer from the Slater Vecchio law firm in Montreal, who filed that legal challenge in Superior Court last week against Uber.